Welcome to the 86th episode of Unifying Force. I'm Kat, joined by Dave and Gio. How is everybody?
Good morning, afternoon, and in maybe evening in some cases.
Yeah, hello from mild and very soaking London, England. Things are good. Got some news stories to talk about, and here we are.
Indeed.
Thanks for joining us.
Dave, so hit us with that celebration news.
So, since we've been on last, there have been allegedly the last announcements for the autograph room. They're talking Hayden Christensen and Vanessa Marshall. What does everybody think about that?
Who's Vanessa Marshall again?
Crickets. Hera. That would be Hera, Space Mom, the voice from Star Wars Rebels. The inspiration for the character played in live action by Ewan's wife, Mary Elizabeth, in Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
yeah,
that's neat.
Mary Elizabeth Winstead's inspiration.
Yes,
and Hayden, that's good.
Yeah, I mean it's a big name. It's a big person, especially with the Sith anniversary being this year. But it's a big, pretty common name. Hayden's been on the circuit for a while. He's around. They didn't hit us with a left field kind of thing. Whereas the announcements before that kind of were, because we got Oscar.
And maybe they can get Daniel Logan to tell more crazy stories.
Oh, you saw that article, yeah.
I'm the one who linked that article.
You're the one that
Those who don't know, this is funny. So there was an article that dropped that Daniel Logan was at, of course, played Boba Fett in Attack of the Clones and voiced him in Clone Wars, was at a con. I think was it Galaxy Con Raleigh, I think?
He's been there, but that hasn't been recent. There, Galaxy Con that has been might have been Richmond, maybe. They're everywhere now.
Well, so he basically said that he was on call for about a year because he was potentially going to show up in Revenge of the Sith. He said at the time the title was just Revenge of, and George hadn't revealed what the whole title was going to be. And he says, well, the title was going to be Revenge of the Fett, and I was going to kill Mace Windu by doing the whole I have the high ground type thing, where Mace was going to try to use the same move on him that he used on Jango, and that Boba Fett was going to do like this backflip with his jetpack and kill Mace by shooting him in the stomach. Except, the Boba Fett character is 13 years old in Revenge of the Sith. And according to Daniel, it was Samuel L. Jackson who intervened and went to George and says, I can't get killed by some punk-ass kid. And so George changed it, and for some reason, Daniel seems to think that this ruined his career. But I'm the type of person who looks at Attack of the Clones and I say that Ian McDiarmid and Christopher Lee are the only two actors who got through that unscathed in terms of actually making it work. Everybody else, not that everybody else was terrible all the way through, but they had their ups and downs, or some were just not good. I mean, I love Daniel. He's a great ambassador for the franchise. He's fun, but they got anybody to play that role in that movie. And then he says, "Oh well, Sam could have at least returned the favor by casting me in Iron Man or something." And like, well, he didn't have any pull at Marvel at the time.
I don't think so.
Yeah, he was a post-credit scene at the time. Not even that. 2008 was when he appeared after the credits.
Here's something. Naladoc says Daniel Logan should have been cast as the adult Boba Fett, not the aging Tamura. Well, not in the year 2000 when they filmed Attack of the Clones, because he was like 10 years old then. But maybe now, yeah, he'd probably be cool to play. Once he gets old, maybe in another 10 years, he could play an aging Boba. That might be neat.
Well, I mean, Tamura kind of he's played an aging clone trooper at that point. We've got him right there. That the Tamura's played the aging clone trooper. Daniel, I don't know that he exactly fits the age range. I would like to see him at his age now, and what was Boba Fett doing at that point, except for the fact that I guess that he's been in the Sarlacc pit that long.
Yeah.
Or what was he doing with the Jawas? I got the
impression that Boba Fett crawled out of the Sarlacc pit within a day or something, because I don't think.
Yeah, I would hope.
Because I would think that even though the Sarlacc digests you over 1,000 years, it doesn't take that long to kill you. You're not going to be immortal for 1,000 years. You're going to probably die within a couple days. So I assumed that he got rescued by or joined the Tuskens not long after that.
So maybe that's the logic behind what they're saying, why he's Tamura's age when he comes out. He's, young Tamura when he goes in. He's old Tamura when he comes out. Maybe that's the logic. But I'm sure that at Daniel's
very intense day
right now, there are some Boba Fett stories that you could tell. You could potentially tell like the bounty hunter stuff that he was doing before Empire.
That's what
definitely
John Carpenter was going to do when he wanted to do his sequel to the thing in 2004. He was going to cast Keith David and Kurt Russell again. He says, "I'll just use Frostbite to explain why they look older." I'm like, okay, that's fine.
It works.
But yeah, there's a lot of great stories to tell with Boba Fett. I really liked his arc in Clone Wars when he becomes a lot more radicalized. That was done really well. But I just saw that story and I read that and I'm like, maybe it's being superfluous, or, embellishing because you're kind of obligated to tell fun stories at con and not tell the same story like 100 times every year.
Yeah.
But I just thought, no, I don't see how that could. I would argue it's the opposite. If George Lucas had allowed 13-year-old Boba Fett to kill Mace from Windu, then I think the fans would have been even more upset, and you would have gotten. And nobody would feel good about seeing you.
Fans today are still wanting, like, Mace Windu lives. He's a definitive death for Windu would have made Daniel Logan like a hated character.
Right. So there was that.
It's Tatooine, Troy. It ages everyone out in the hot desert sun.
Yeah, if you don't moisturize, if you don't have a good skincare regimen.
Into
correct.
I think those are some good announcements. It'll be fun to see. I want to see what else is coming. This is a pretty small autograph room. And again, a good source has said that these are the last regular announcements. So I believe, but I want to see like what potential surprises are happening. What else is going to be going on that makes Celebration special? And it tends to do that.
Well, that's part of the fun is that Celebration also has a lot of surprises because aside from panels and things, they don't really advertise. Well, they do advertise who's going to be there, but it's not as much up in lights as things they advertise from the autograph hall or photo op. And so, oh gosh. Daniel Logan will be playing James Bond Jr. in the new Amazon spinoff series. You heard it here first, and then
Melodics just spoiled our secret announcment. Leaked. That was what we were here for.
Oh, that's amazing. We'll get to that. That's coming. but it's for Celebration news as well. Is the art show stuff was announced this week. There's some really cool pieces out in there, and I think it's been really nice that in our group, a number of the artists have been on telling a little bit of the story behind their pieces and things. So go check the Facebook group for those posts, and you can see some of that. I think there's a lot of really nice ones. I really liked the one. Have you guys looked at them?
Not in detail yet.
Okay, so there's one that's kind of a Padme and I think some of her handmaidens that's done in a style that I don't know about what the artist was thinking, is very reminiscent of Muka, that kind of really kind of Art Deco-y framing behind it. And I think that's a really cool thing when you put a property and when you do it well. Like I love the Darth Vader in Starry Night. I love that. I think that's great. But this kind of thing, when you do it well and it pay homage to an artist from long ago and put that back into Star Wars, I like that a lot. Yeah, Troy's going like this. The Chimera piece is very sweet. It's a really cool piece there, and that will be because I was just. Small side note at MegaCon Orlando, and I was talking to Manny Jacinto, the actor who plays Chimera and the Stranger, and just about the lack of Stranger merchandise. There's, the helmet is on pre-order for Hasbro Pulse, but that's not coming out till August or September. But that art piece will be an amazing piece to have Manny sign at Celebration.
Definitely.
And the art piece I picked up at Celebration, the big Yoda painting that says "Train him, I will," where he's standing in the swamp bog on Dagobah, is like one of the favorite things I got at Celebration, even though I haven't found a place to hang it yet. And that was 5 years ago, or it's almost 6 years ago.
It's always a juggle trying to find places for your merchandise and your art and all sorts. There's only so much physical space we have, so sometimes you have to make those difficult choices. Right. You got a spot for one poster or one figurine or something. I feel like everyone who has Funko Pops has unlimited space, though. The addiction buying that they have, it's just like, what's going on there? That's 126th Star Wars Funko Pop you have.
Well, that's what I ended up having Manny sign.
Yes.
That's some of the very few merch.
Right
there's
there.
Not Stranger merch, but there's Chimera merch.
Yeah.
So that's what I ended up with another one.
Yeah. If it exists by name somewhere, Funko Pop will grab that.
But there's not a Stranger one yet.
They can make one of him, like, the Funkos that are wide that have like a whole set of him in the pool, in the pool of water with his shirt. That'll sell like hotcakes.
See, that'll be on some shelves.
There is a whole series of original Superman 1 Funkos that are coming out, like Superman in the fortress with the crystals, and there's a Jor-El, Marlon Brando Jor-El, and all sorts of Gene Hackman, Lex Luthor. All those are on pre-order maybe.
It's got little eyeballs and the same shaped head, but everybody knows which one it is.
Yeah. Their merchandising and marketing team is extra.
Yes,
special.
We are aware.
They get everything.
Funko Pops are the new Beanie Babies. I know.
They're also like Fortnite characters. Just anytime there's a IP coming up, there's just gonna be these new models made. You can just imagine they've got like a template and they just change like 2 or 3 colors, 1 or 2 accents of shade here or there, and you got new armor, new outfits.
Oh yeah.
I remember it was fun when I was looking for Beanie Babies. I was looking for a particular one that was next to impossible to find, and it took years, and I finally found it. I still have it.
Yes.
Jabber the parrot.
Bright Suns Hunter, I see you over there lurking on the Instagram. We are following that as well. It just doesn't show up in our main feed, and we can't display it. But
4,000 worse.
Let's share that. Yeah,
share that. It's funny. My 4,000 Transformers figures and all this HasLab ghost will one day be discovered thousands of years from now by future archaeologists rummaging through the Midden Dump here in Central Ohio.
It's not far from the truth. Is for the moment, like all of my Transformers and GI Joes and Masters of the Universe and Star Wars, it's all on a lovely display here for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wait till I die and my children get a hold of it.
They'll find a HasLab ghost and they'll think that this was a shrunk down piece of real technology.
Yeah.
Good morning, Bruce.
Piece together civilization comments.
Nice to see you, Bruce.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, everyone. In the comments, it's really nice to have that interaction. But yeah, you're gonna end up having these toys that are made of PVC and various carbonated vinyl compounds that never ever disintegrate, filling up landfill and then or basements of houses, and then being discovered, and people will be like, oh wow, they had a twin engine pod racing thing going on, because
I love the meme or the content that is periodically put out that, after the post-apocalyptic, where there are no records or anything, and archaeologists unearth Disney World and just think that it's this giant, massive cult devoted to a mouse.
You can imagine what happens when they find thousands of years from now the remnants of the Indiana Jones ride, and it's like, oh, there's an ancient Hindu temple in Anaheim.
Yes. Yes, exactly. We're just totally messing with the archaeological records.
See, Bruce gets it. The future will find everyone's Star Wars collections and believe it to be a cult.
You're not wrong. We've actually done an early episode on that very topic.
And the bronze Yoda statues, they will see those outside Skywalker Ranch and Disney, and they'll look at that and be like, see, this was real.
Yeah, they'll be like,
aliens did exist. They had visited Earth and we worshipped them.
Yeah, or like this is a Northern Californian version of the Bodhisattva Buddhist statues. Just change it a little bit. For Western audiences. Yeah, there's going to be a lot of fun stuff to discover after the fact. But yeah, I was just going back to the artist, the Celebration art show being released. I've just been going over it, and I do see the Padme handmaiden artwork. It's called Angel of Naboo by a Dawn Murphy. I see exactly what you're saying in terms of that Muka comparison. There's a really nice one called Anakin's Path, which has Hayden from episode 3 and like a stormy background, and then the youngling 3000 killer hovering between his eyes.
Yeah, the one with it across his face, and it's like half translucent, and
yeah, and then his face is 50% in shadow, and then the part that's lit up has the dark side Sith eyes. That one's great. Very, very moody. There's some really fun ones from Clone Wars, very colorful, whether it's like the ARC Troopers, Darkness on Umbara, which is really pleasantly colorful, actually, for such a grim storyline and a physically very dark arc of the Clone Wars. So yeah, don't just take our word for it. Definitely check them out.
Yeah, go look at that. Is find that Celebration Art Show link and look through all of them. It's a really cool mix. A lot of some dark and moody stuff, some kind of mid stuff, some really light and bright. It's something I think that's going to fit pretty much everybody's tastes.
Yeah, a lot of variety, which is great, because sometimes you think people are just going to like jump on the bandwagon and do it like one theme depending on the location of Celebration, but it's very multifaceted and very international looking. But there's some awesome kind of East Asian, Japanese style flavors of Star Wars as well, as you'd expect. Going back,
there's one I think that's got some Star Wars characters turned into like traditional Japanese. I can't think of what they're called at the moment, but it just kind of like makes them rounder, and I don't have that in front of me at the moment, but look, go check. So let's move on, and we can talk about like our second topic there is before we get Cat started, let's talk about no spoilers. Captain America. I finally got to see it last night. I went down there. Yeah, I know it took a while. Skip has been giving me unending crap because he'll call and he'll talk to me. Have you seen it yet? It's like I can't talk about it. But brief top of my head review is it was okay. It was an enjoyable film to see. It was not the most amazing thing I've ever seen in my life.
It was a Captain America movie where Captain America isn't really the main character. It's like the story. He's the vessel of which the story happens around. It's weirdly a sequel to Incredible Hulk, which is a movie they had done their damnedest to get you to forget for many years until they brought Abomination back in the She-Hulk show years ago. I like the political espionage plot and the revenge. But it's basically like, I thought that plotting was fun. Action's okay. Some of the action's good. Some of it's not. But it didn't look very cinematic. It looked like an episode of Falcon Winter Soldier TV show. Like it didn't. Like even when movies are shot on digital, they do. They add something to it to give it that kind of cinema quality, and this just didn't have that.
They dumb it down to make it look like film.
You try and do something for that. But again, I get why they made Sam Captain America in the comics, even though they did it in 2014 when Cap was at his Steve Rogers was at his height with Winter Soldier movie and stuff like that. But I went back and watched some of those movies after seeing Brave New World, and it's like, I wish they'd used Falcon more as Falcon because I think he's like a really great character. Like it still irks me that he shows up like in the beginning of Age of Ultron at Avengers Tower, but then he doesn't hang around for the rest of the movie, and he shows up at the very end just to be on the new Avengers team. I'm like, why didn't you have him show up at the climax with Nick Fury on the helicarrier and kick ass and But because I love Anthony Mackie, I love him. I love that character. I love the way he plays him. He said recently he wants to play Sam Wilson for the next 10 years. Yeah. He's looking forward to his role in Avengers, Doomsday, and Secret Wars. But yeah, it was kind of like you could tell that this movie was cobbled together. Like Giancarlo Esposito's character was added entirely in post. They actually eliminated a different Serpent Society character, Diamondback, the pink-haired girl that she was in the original cut and got cut from the movie and replaced with Giancarlo. I think the original story was going to be a race for Super Soldier Serum, which is why they bring back some of a character from the Incredible Hulk. I'm not going to say, no spoilers if you haven't seen it. But then, of course, they changed it to be a race for Adamantium because I think enough fans are complaining that Celestial Island has not been commented on in like 5 years.
I thought that was an odd choice to completely bring in Elementals, which nobody watched.
Well, that's the thing, is it's like,
or Eternals,
nobody was right, and nobody was clear about what the continuity was since then, because like this massive Celestial Island has been there for 4 years now, and it's not been acknowledged in any of the other projects, so it felt like something they just kind of threw in there to help establish a timeline or something. I don't know. But on the positive side, I thought Harrison Ford was great. He really gave a really good performance as Ross. I think they over-advertised the climax a bit too much, like in terms of leaning into that in the marketing, but Captain America, all the loose ends.
I mean, I really enjoyed the Harrison Ford aspect. I mean, there are very few Harrison Ford projects that I haven't enjoyed. He was what the movie needed to hold it together. If they had done that with another actor, there just wasn't enough of Avengers. There wasn't enough Marvelness in this movie. I think it got hurt because I don't want to be completely spoilery, but I think there were places that they had intended to have other characters, but they rewrote and put somebody else in it. So, that kind of, for whatever reasons, whether it's budget or other whatever reasons, I think the beginning of it got a little political preachy. I wonder how much of that was rewritten and reshot after the presidential election looked like it was going to turn out the way it did.
They did wrap. They finished the reshoots as late as November. So if they did make changes, and I heard that Disney apparently was intervening earlier than that, not wanting them to take as strong a political stance as they were taking. So the movie does seem to walk a weird political line with between Sam and Ross, and it's like I don't know. But of course, Isaiah Bradley character returning from Falcon Winter Soldier still is a movie. Carl Lumbly's really great performance as that character. I wish they used him more, but.
So if you have not seen the movie, before you see the movie, I would recommend. So people are not completely lost. I did this with my wife. My wife, I sat down and Friday night we watched the Hulk because she'd never seen that. And
the 2008 one with Edward Norton.
Yeah, the Edward Norton Hulk. Because if you have not seen that movie, you'd be lost. You would miss a lot of this movie. I wish that I had known that Celestial Island was going to play as big a part, and I would have had her go back and watch Eternals because she has never seen that. That would have made a lot of sense. She had seen
ready to write this down.
She had seen She-Hulk, so therefore understood parts of this.
I tapped out of She-Hulk after the 3rd episode, but I didn't feel lost from not having seen that show. So I think people can maybe get by without that.
Get by without She-Hulk, but you don't need Eternals, but it would be helpful to figure out what that is.
Just to know like why this giant thing is in the middle of the ocean.
and you need Hulk. You need Hulk.
Yeah.
Well, that's the weird thing. We know that the rights situation with Universal, it's either Marvel doesn't want to do a movie with Universal or Universal doesn't want to collaborate with them to do another Hulk movie like they did in 2008. So it's like a Hulk sequel that doesn't have Hulk in it. So it's like,
yeah,
I don't know. What did
I
you
feel
say?
Like Universal. I feel like Universal's still bitter that their Monsters MCU Dark Universe failed badly, and they're like, no, we'll keep hold of the Incredible Hulk, the one monster that we had.
Well, and here's your other thing is read a comic book. Damn it, is go out there and find some things, because again, I'm having to lean over and explain why, and this is not a spoiler because you've seen it in the trailers, why the Hulk is red. And I'm like, no, but they didn't just know. This exists. This happens. There's precedent. It's like explaining to my daughter again why the Falcon became Captain America, and why, not everything is Chris Evans. It's like, no. It's like, read a comic book, damn it. Yeah. Falcon's been Captain America. Bucky's been Captain America. Technically, U.S. Agent has been Captain America. But
Did you see it, Gio?
I haven't seen it yet. That's why I was joking with my pen. I'm going to be writing down these recommendations.
Yes.
The Incredible Hulk 2008, She-Hulk, ? Captain, all the Captain America films, to be honest, I think are mandatory before you see the
and Falcon and Winter Soldier is the one I tapped out of that one after a couple of episodes, so I don't know that that's required, but it would probably.
Falcon Winter Soldier, because I guess you're right. You don't really need that either, because it's like we already know that Sam is Captain America from when Cap gave him the shield.
Yeah,
but speaking
that's
of
probably the most important scene.
I feel that Falcon Winter Soldier has a scene which you really needed in this movie, which is like at the end of that show when Cap is and Sam's in full gear as Captain America. He really makes a firm stance and makes a big speech for what he stands for and everything. And I felt in this movie he doesn't really stand for anything, because again he's just the vessel which the story happens around. And yeah, he's got morals and stuff, but I didn't feel he was taking as hard line of an approach like Steve Rogers took in all 3 of his Captain America movies.
I think Sam's biggest stand was his feeling for Isaiah Bradley.
Right, and I thought they could have done a lot more with that in this movie.
Right. I actually thought that the finale, the last episode of Falcon and Winter Soldier Disney Plus show, they would have that scene or something similar to it, referencing it at the beginning of this film, just to reconnect the dots. Because it's been a while since, even if you watched that show as it came out and you were a huge fan, or you loved it, you hated it, whatever, it's been a while since then. It's been 3.5 years.
Yeah. Oh, that's what. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's been 3.5 years. So that was a 2021 show that came out, after WandaVision, still in lockdown, which might have been why a lot of people did watch it compared to later Disney Plus shows, because there wasn't the cinema experience available or just going outside. But then also, I think that Falcon and the Winter Soldier was a little bit up and down for me as a series. Overall, I did like it. I think it brought in comic elements that were relevant. I think it developed Sam and Bucky a little bit more, which is what I wanted from the main MCU films that you just don't have time to do. And I think that it is worth seeing, even though I haven't seen this, Brave New World yet. I think I would probably encourage everyone to see the Falcon and Winter Soldier series, or at least become familiar with it, if you don't mind just reading wiki summaries online, just so that you know what's going on, who's who a little bit more. And I'd add that probably the most important scene for me, if you're completely just going along with a friend, family member, partner, whatever, or just rolling the dice and going to see Captain America 4 right now, even though you don't have a lot of MCU background, is just watching the finale of Avengers Endgame and that last conversation between Steve Rogers, Bucky, and Sam on that bench. I think if there's one scene you must watch, it's that one before going into this.
Yeah, and I did remember that there's a reason, Kat, why you want to watch Falcon and Winter Soldier is to understand who Isaiah Bradley is. You would not know otherwise.
Yes, that's incredibly important, I feel, from the trailer. I
mean,
I haven't seen it, but
explain it a little bit in the movie, but you really want to, Falcon and Winter Soldier to understand Isaiah Bradley and his importance.
Yeah. And they do, the show does, even though it's 6 short episodes, again, it does develop Isaiah Bradley into like a grounded and real human character. So I think anytime you've got some character development in any kind of show, it's will enhance your film going experience.
Yep. Absolutely. But like I said, his initial review is enjoyable. Harrison Ford, good. Anthony Mackie, good. It didn't feel Avengery, a lot of the other movies, the other Captain America movies, even his first solo movie, right? Captain America, the First Avenger, felt Avengery.
Yeah.
But this one not quite as big. They've been building, going over the top, and this felt like a couple notches back. And maybe it is a cycle that they have to go through to where they can build for Doomsday. I saw the Thunderbolts trailer ahead of it, and there's some interesting things that happen in this movie that may kind of affect and figure out what's going to go on with the Thunderbolts. So maybe that's going to be a notch up, because it's got such an ensemble cast and a bunch of different characters from the MCU. And then I guess we're building to Doomsday. Well, I guess we're building, and we're going to have Fantastic Four before Doomsday.
I guarantee Fantastic Four is going to tie into Avengers Doomsday. That's got to be.
Yeah, it's got to. But we'll have to wait and see how, because it looks like how retro future-y that it is. Is it our Earth in the past, or is it?
It's not our Earth. No, because because that would be something that everybody in the MCU would know about if there was our past. And I believe it was mentioned in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness when Doctor Strange meets the other Fantastic Four. You mentioned something. It's like, hey, weren't you guys around in the city or something? You disappeared or some kind of line like that. Because I think the idea is that when they had their accident, they got somehow teleported to a different multiverse and came back onto this different version of Earth where they're now that retro future thing where there's celebrities.
That would make a lot more sense.
Yeah, I think that's what they're doing, but we'll see.
Oh, and absolutely, it goes without saying for Captain America, stick around through the credits for the post-credit scene. Like again, Marvel has been doing this so long. Why people get up and leave the theater? Why?
I think because a lot of the post-credit scenes aren't very good anymore, and they're not really. They figure, I'll just fast forward when it hits Disney Plus, Yeah. And I guarantee that they forgot what this post-credit scene was, because you could tell they needed to rewrite the dialogue. Because oh yeah, that was when the plan was, like Kang Dynasty or whatever, and that's not the plan anymore. So this doesn't really work. But oh well.
Yeah, but it is one of those things that ties up some of the loose ends in the movie to see the post credits.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My biggest question actually with the film is, did you at any point have the same feeling or the same tone, the same vibe as what I think is one of the strongest films actually in any genre as a blockbuster in the last 20 years, and that's Captain America: The Winter Soldier. I think that's one of the default best MCU films by far. And the trailer to me gave a little bit of that ambience, a little bit of that vibe. And I'm just wondering, did any of that survive to make the final cut of the film, or was it just good editing in the promotional stuff?
The trailer,
plotting wise, kind of, because it has that espionage type plot, but it's not. I mean, you could follow the story. I mean, and there is a lot of repetitive expository dialogue. Like, you could tell when they were doing the reshoots that they didn't know what scene was going to end up in the final edit and what wasn't, so they just made sure to say the same type of dialogue over and over again. And I was getting kind of annoyed with it because it's like, guys, I can follow the story pretty easily, which is surprising given how cobbled together this thing is. And you can tell they were trying to go for a Winter Soldier-y, grounded, because that was apparently one of the criticisms at the disastrous test screening in January of last year that precipitated all the reshoots, was that they felt it was way too fantastical for a Captain America movie. And I'm like, I don't know what that means when you look at the first Avenger, because that was kind of fantastical too.
It really kind of was.
Fairy tale.
Yeah, and it's like, but you could tell they were really going for that. And again, I thought the plot was really leaning into that more, but the execution just wasn't really there. Okay. And it was the one Marvel movie where Feige didn't give an interview on the red carpet, and fans are reading a lot into that because everybody knows Feige wants to get to X-Men. He's been excited talking about that for a long time, but he didn't want to rush into it. And I feel like it's kind of, okay, again, whatever this movie was going to be.
Movie can go down the road to that.
It can. I just feel like whatever they had different intentions for this movie originally, and that all changed during reshoots to the point that it's largely an inconsequential, sort of inconsequential installment, when you think about it. And
we'll see what happens and how it ties to Thunderbolts, and see if that does that and continues that. We'll see. Mm-hmm. All right, so now let's get it started. Kat, was there any big news this week?
There was news this week.
You sound quite sad. What's going on? Are you okay?
So, 2 months ago, there was this Wall Street Journal article that came out, which detailed that the reason there had been no traction between Amazon and Eon making a new James Bond movie was because they were at an impasse creatively. Because Amazon wants to do what Disney did to Star Wars, what Marvel's been doing with all their properties in the last 3 phases, which is just a bunch of spin-offs, and we have to trust the algorithm for our casting decisions, and we want to overhaul the merchandise, do all this kind of crap. And they're like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. Like, we have to agree 50-50 on this. And we've been doing this for
a little bit more for everybody who doesn't know. Who does Amazon, who do people actually ultimately or did answer to for James Bond?
Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson are running Eon, and then Jennifer Salke runs the Amazon's video content head, and then of course Bezos at the top of Amazon. But so there was a stalemate. It wasn't going anywhere, and news just broke on Thursday that they didn't say it on Thursday. They confirmed it on Friday that Bezos and Amazon cut Barbara and Michael $1 billion check to gain complete creative control over the franchise. They will still retain 50% ownership, which means they're still going to get royalties. I wonder if this has something to do with the fact that lawsuit was filed, copyright lawsuit was filed a few weeks ago, where this Austrian billionaire who's building a mega resort in Dubai on those 6 man-made islands they have is trying to exploit a UK copyright law, which says that if you haven't exercised your copyright in certain departments in 5 years, then you can lose the copyright that you have for everything. And they didn't know what he wanted it for. Maybe because, billionaires, we got to make more money and charge people to, use these things. And that probably ramps up the pressure to break the stalemate. And because it's Amazon, they're not going to go bankrupt. They're not going to sell it. They're going to hold the line. And so Barbara and Michael were like, well, there's really no path forward. So they sold to Amazon, and for 63 years to have a family-run movie franchise is insane and amazing. But to give it to a corporation like and the bullshit statement that Amazon put out, "Oh, we respect Barbara Michael," all this crap. It's like, you said that after that first meeting with the Prime, when they had the meeting with Jennifer Salk and she referred to it as content, and we have to do all these spin-offs and stuff.
Yeah.
After that meeting went sour, they couldn't get a meeting with anybody higher than level 6 clearance in Prime Video anymore. It's like Amazon basically gave them the cold shoulder because they wanted to, starve them out, so to speak. And the fact that the very day they announced this news, Bezos tweets, "So who do you want to play James Bond?" A little marketing ploy. It's like, okay, so you've been paying attention this entire time, which means that you're the one behind giving them the cold shoulder. So no, you don't respect them or the franchise. You just want to run it into the ground like everything else has been done. And it's not like there haven't been spin-offs before. They did do the James Bond Jr. cartoon show in like the 80s or the 90s. It's awful. They did write a script for a Halle Berry Jinx movie that was going to be a spin-off from Die Another Day back in 2002, and she ultimately chose the Catwoman movie instead.
Great choice.
Yeah, great choice.
Well, great choice for James Bond because she didn't run Jinx into the ground like she did Catwoman.
Yes, and you're right, no, dog. Yeah, because Amazon respected Tolkien too. Yeah, they.
Oh yeah, that family estate. They love Amazon clearly.
It's as sad as upset that Amazon announced a season 3 of Rings of Power for some reason. Oh wait, that is me.
I got through like the first episode of that and I was done.
Like here's the thing that's so wrong-headed about Amazon wanting to do a Moneypenny series. The whole point of the Moneypenny characters that she and Bond have this really sexually charged, flirtatious interactions in the office, but the joke is that they've never been on a date and they've never slept together. That's the joke. You don't need a Moneypenny series. It'll be like when DC let the Starz Network do the Alfred Pennyworth show. And it's like, okay, we know that in the comics Alfred used to be SAS or whatever, but the show had nothing to do with him eventually working for the Waynes or, mentoring Batman. I mean, it'd be one thing if it was like a frame story where he's like, "Well, Master Wayne, this is how I did," this kind of thing, or where he came. But it's not. It's just like a random show that they just slapped the Pennyworth title on, and so
it would have been different if
they're going to slap it on a lunchbox. And they're selling it. They're selling it. They're selling it.
It would have been different if Alfred had basically turned out to be James Bond. If they had written like a good that's how you get your Bond series is. Do that content, but do it with another guy that's not Bond.
Yeah, and it's just you just slap the and certain things they're going to overhaul, like merchandise, obviously, so they can fend off the lawsuit. And yeah, there's a lot of overpriced junk and just bizarre things on the Bond website, and it clearly caters to a more wealthy clientele, and that's something that they can overhaul and frankly should. But the thing is, Bond is not something that it did appeal to young people a long time ago. I mean, I know that when Goldfinger and Thunderball came out, there was a massive merchandising thing where you had action figures, you had toys, and so it's not like they haven't merchandised the hell out of this franchise before, but they made a very conscious decision that they were going to cater it more to a specific clientele, like a more, people like the kick back, have a nice drink, finer things. They don't want to. It's like you're going to dilute the brand with all this stuff because it's going to rob it of its uniqueness to put a movie out once every few years.
And it's not like the Broccoli family has like they've had it all together the entire time. I mean, they did make the exact same movie twice and just give it a different name.
I think they did it 3 times. You Only Live Twice, Spy Who Loved Me, and
I'm talking about. Didn't they make Thunderball twice with a different name?
They did not. That's a whole other story about a copyright thing that some other guy was exploiting the copyright and they couldn't do anything to stop it. But that was something else. But they've made bumps in the road. But here's the thing. The fact that the one thing that jumped out at me at the Wall Street Journal article more than all of the other things of the stalemate is that Amazon said, we need to worry about longevity for this franchise. I'm like, it's been around for 60 years and it reinvents itself through so many different. What do you mean? It doesn't need to be reinvented. It's like when those morons took over Star Trek and said, well, we need to build a foundation for Star Trek. It's like, you have 39 years worth of shows and movies for your foundation. What are you talking about? But then again, they just put out a movie with a genocidal maniac as the protagonist and wanting you to like that person. So they're obviously completely out to lunch.
Everybody gets a redemption.
Yeah. And it's just, Well, I don't trust Amazon at all.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get a Prime Video subscription to watch the streaming shows. Frankly, I don't really want a James Bond streaming show. I think it's a very, not in the age of shared universes and everything, not everything needs to be long form TV. Like, I remember even watching Spectre and all my misgivings with that movie. When Bond's chasing Blofeld's helicopter at the end, I'm saying to myself in my head on first viewing, please don't do to be continued. Don't do to be continued. Can we just let this end?
and like the MCU tried this, and they gave us Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. only worked in my opinion, for a little while. I mean, the first part of it, I love that show to begin with, and then
season 1 was good,
and then it just off the rails.
Yeah,
and I mean because you're gonna run out of that content and that storyline going over and over and over again. If you had made season 1 of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. into a movie, boom.
Yeah, and it's like, I know they spent a lot. One of the reasons they really wanted MGM was to get this franchise and to cut $1 billion check. But it's like, realistically, it's going to take something mammoth to get Bond back in the pop culture zeitgeist to the point that the merchandise they're going to be making is going to be selling like hotcakes. And the idea that they want to make it more for young people and all of that, it's like, well, a lot of kids already like it, or not as much in the modern era, but you'd have to change too much of the DNA of what it is to make that work.
You're not gonna.
It's kind of like we were mentioning in one of our other episodes that, these corporate, overlords, they have ideas for what they want to do for their own franchises, but they're not brave. They don't want to launch their own franchise because they're impatient. They want an immediate built-in audience. So they tie it to some old IP, knowing that even if the original fans don't like it and you're alienating them, they're still going to check it out to see how bad it is.
Right.
That's what they're counting on.
And they'll make the quick money. They're just not going to create or keep a franchise going that's in the long term. Is they'll get their money, boom, take it. But now we've ruined this IP, and
and it's like, I don't want to see this become a big shared universe with Avengers style team ups and crap. Amazon tried that a few years ago. They announced this show called Citadel. They spent $300 million on it. They planned all these spin-offs that were going to eventually cross over, and it crashed and burned hard. Whereas the other things, they've admittedly, the Jack Ryan show and the Jack Reacher show have been well received, but they're actually run by really good people. But those are also
that gives some small hope.
And those are also shows, though. And it's like, I don't want to see a bunch of James Bond TV shows. I'd rather see it on the big screen. And even though the MGM division of Amazon still does theatrical rollout, and they still make their movies available outside of Prime Video, like on I'm not sure if they even put Blu-ray for MGM anymore, if it just goes to digital. But it's like, I don't trust this decision at all. I mean, I get why they sold it. They're at an impasse. There's nothing they can really do to get away from Amazon. I disagree wholeheartedly with the morons on the internet right now who are saying, you should have vetted Amazon before you sold to them. It's like, it wasn't their decision to sell. MGM owns the franchise, half the franchise. Eon is one of their subsidiaries, and they're not on the board of directors, so MGM just chose to make that sale. There's nothing they can do about it.
Well, do you think some of this impetus is that allegedly the copyright is going to run out in 2035?
Well, but there was a more immediate threat that because they hadn't exercised a lot of their merchandising copyright, that they could lose the right to use the James Bond name. They couldn't even say the phrase Bond, James Bond. You can't even use the 007 letters. And the theory was that the billionaire wanted this both to charge money for them to use it and to market his big mega resort in Dubai. But that's a speculation. Nobody knows why. But obviously, a billionaire's got their own legal team, so he's not going to waste his time with this unless he thought he could win. And I guarantee that ramped up the pressure. Because another reason I think the Wall Street Journal article is dead on, because people are like, oh, it's just speculation. I'm like, if that was wrong, there were so many explosive things said in that article, you would have seen both sides coming out and denying it immediately. And they didn't. And I think that this is why we're here. I mean, yes, much respect for everything that the Broccoli family has done for the franchise, no doubt. But it's like any time you have to sell to a corporate overlord, it is not a good day. It's
let's tie this into the Star Wars, because that is, of course, the theme of the unifying force.
And that's the thing, is that Bob Iger told George that he was going to respect it and he was going to go with his ideas, and then he didn't. And then George was very vocally upset about that, believing he had been the victim of a bait and switch. It's like, it's a corporation, a soulless corporation. What did you think was going to happen?
Right.
And
yeah, it was a little bit naive
except
on reflection.
In George's case, he had a lot more control because he's the one who chose to sell to them. In Bond's case, they didn't have any control over that decision. And frankly, MGM needed to be bought by somebody because they kept going bankrupt all the time. And I think Amazon's thinking was that I think they genuinely believed that Barbara and Michael were going to be happy to be owned by Amazon because most of the delays in the franchise have been due to either MGM going bankrupt or MGM falling victim to aggressive corporate takeovers. It's like, well, that's not an issue anymore. And now that you have more money, we can actually, expand this franchise with, more merchandise, all that kind of stuff to try and build. Because Amazon's not wrong when they say the Bond's not really in the zeitgeist as much as it used to be. They want to do that. Yeah. But their method for doing that is not. It's like, how are you going to make this stand apart from Jack Reacher, from Jason Bourne, from Jack Ryan? Because you don't want it to be super great. Because Bond firmly has his feet in the fantasy world. And when people at Amazon are saying things like, well, we don't really like that he's a womanizer. I don't really think he's a hero. We should change it to being, a female agent. And it's like, if you don't like anything that the franchise is, then why did you want to buy it?
I think you're exactly right. Is for right or for wrong, changing Bond's misogyny is going to make him Jack Reacher. You'd go back to the point, and you're changing who he is, updating him for he's supposed to be a relic of the Cold War.
That's why M says that to him in GoldenEye. She says, I think you're a sexist, misogynist dinosaur, a relic of the Cold War. And that was them acknowledging it, but they grew from that. And frankly, if you go back and watch a lot of the movies, it's like a lot of it. The Connery era had a lot of misogynist things in it, but the ones after that didn't really have that anywhere near as much. And frankly, you have to also look at the films in the lens that they were released. You usually didn't see women in big action co-starring roles in movies like that. And so in that way, it was a bit ahead of its time in certain ones. But something that's like the most blatantly offensive would be Thunderball and then Goldfinger when it comes to those two especially.
And like Brosnan was doing it very tongue-in-cheek. He was doing it as a parody of that kind of thing.
Right, and that was kind of that was the whole reason they acknowledged that. We're like, yeah, we get that we're in changing time. That's why they decided to make M a woman, not just because they've already had a female PM and head of MI6 in England, but it's also to show that, hey, we're changing with the times, and that's something the franchise has always been able to do. But there's a difference between misogyny and being a full-on womanizer. It's like, yeah, if you go out on a date with somebody and they're consenting adults, they have a good time, then so what? It's like, then it's fine. Some of the more radical, people on the internet, and I read so many articles leading up to the release of No Time to Die where they're like, I've only seen one or two of these movies, and then they just ream the whole franchise. No. And it's like, and it's because they see that line because most of them saw GoldenEye because they grew up with like the video games, and then they watch her say that line and they assume that, oh, well, if she said that, and that's by extension the franchise owners acknowledging that, then that must mean all 16 movies before this have been totally into that type of thing. And it's like, well, not really. Some of them more than others, but they've frankly gotten past that quite a while ago. And that was, remember, this is going to be in November, the 30th anniversary of GoldenEye. So it's like, you're 30 years past this issue. I mean, they had their female co-lead arguably in No Time to Die be a 00 agent, and even 007. That's pretty progressive.
Yeah.
And I would not be opposed to her getting a spinoff. She's pretty cool. I think that'd be a fun thing to do. But do I want a Moneypenny spinoff? No. Do I need a Q story about Q's trying to get through the day? No. Like, do I need a backstory about a series about how M became M and MI? No. It's like, but that's what they're going to do.
I'm waiting for the Jaws vlog on how he got his first braces. That's what I want.
So,
Agents of Spectre, the new Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Oh,
here we go. Because they set news stories within a 50s, 60s era, not for the character, but to keep the tech completely.
Two things about that. One, it's like, well, we've already done James Bond in the 60s. It was called the Connery era.
Right.
But
there
yes,
were a lot of those.
in terms of keeping the tech more grounded, though, they've kind of done that. They said one of the challenges in the Craig era with doing gadgets is that so many people have instant gadgets in their pocket with smartphones and stuff that it's like, what do we do for gadgets anymore? Which is why in Skyfall, when they introduce Q and he gives him the fingerprint gun or the gun that's coded to his fingerprint, so only he can fire it. Q was like, were you expecting an exploding pen? We don't really go in for that anymore. Which was them being cheeky that they're not doing some of the hokier things, and then they kind of walked that back in some of the later movies. But yeah, if they go back to the 60s and 50s, it would probably be a much more grounded espionage. Because you read the original books and they weren't overloaded with gadgets and stuff. That was something that the movies kind of leaned into heavily, and they were more grounded espionage stuff. However, one of the things the films completely divorced themselves from the books is that Fleming wrote these books as like a neo-imperialist, British imperialist fantasy, because after World War II, Britain wasn't really a superpower anymore. And when people say, "Oh, Bond's outdated today," and I'm like, "Well, he was outdated when the book was published in 1953." The first book, because that whole idea was not really a thing anymore. And that's why the new books, the new editions of his books have been put out and have been sanitized. They've gotten rid of the racial epithets, they've got and the slurs, and they've gotten rid of a lot of the sexism and stuff. Which it's like, I mean, I get why they did that, but at the same time, it's like it gives you a window into what he was thinking when he was writing it, and you can see how the movies are very different from that because they didn't want to.
Well, that's their interpretation of it protecting the IP is not letting you know what the original IP was.
Exactly, and there was even an instance where they redubbed a line in Dr. No when Bond and Coral are on the beach with Honey Rider, and they see the bad guys coming on the boat. And he says to Coral to fetch his shoes, but I think in the original cut he says, "Boy, fetch my shoes," because Coral's black man, and they dubbed that over for the DVD release, and changed that because that's not a good look, and that kind of stuff. But so they've changed, they've tried to get away from that, and they've done that. They've been away from that for so long that it's like, I mean, you'd have to change so much to make it fit. I mean, yeah, they could do a 007 series in the 60s. But I also ask, what's going to separate it from being just another, it'd be like another Jack Ryan, Jack Reacher, just set with the 60s aesthetic. And it's like, I like the idea. So it's not often anymore where you get to sit down and watch a movie where it feels like it's only 2 hours long and there's no to be continued and you just enjoy it and that's the end of it. That's what Scorsese meant when he said Marvel isn't cinema, because it's always teasing you about what's coming next and wanting to get you more excited about the next thing, rather than just letting the one movie just be its own thing. And there's going to be, again, the shared universe, the teases. I really hope they don't try, because you can't really plan. The reason the Craig era was such a mess is that you can't plan out an arc because you don't know what's going to be going on in the world.
Right.
When you make your next movie. And sure, you could argue that the films recycle the same formula a lot, but the Craig era was a deconstruction of the character, which the fans didn't really want or need. But you can't do a whole beginning, middle, and end and plan that out over like a 15. If it's going to be like a 10-year or 15-year span for an actor,
and I can't imagine you're going to keep an actor for that long anymore. You're not going to get Sean Connery again.
Yeah, you're not going to get that, and I think Craig stayed as long as he did simply because there was so much time between some of those movies that he had time to do other things. But Amazon, knowing them, movies are going to be coming a lot sooner, which again, looking at the positives, yeah, they can overhaul the merchandising website. Yes, there's not going to be any more 5 to 6 years. Like if you look at the chart of how often they were releasing movies when Cubby was running it versus when Barbara and Michael took over, it like the length of time doubled and then it tripled, and it was just getting. It's like, yes, it's nice that it only comes along once every few years to make it special, but then sometimes it gets to a point where it's like, okay, come on, guys, you need to get moving on this. Like the first movies were released 1 year apart for the first 4,
So 2006, James Bond was threatened by the Jason Bourne series, but I'll argue yes. But then Bourne got oversaturated and is the exact problem of what we're talking about here. Is they just kept pumping out more Bourne and more Bourne and more Bourne, and you're like, okay.
Yeah. Thanks, David Joel, for joining. Friend of mine. I actually felt very similar in the mid 2000s. I thought the Bourne Identity was one of the best action films I'd ever seen, and at the time it was very innovative in terms of like the filmmaking techniques. cinematography, the editing, the way, you felt very visceral and part of the scenery watching, Matt Damon go to town on these other assassins. It had a great car chase. And to me, that was the now definitive Spy, which might sound like heresy being British, but I always saw Pierce Brosnan as a kind of modern Roger Moore in a way, a little bit more tongue-in-cheek, a little bit campy, slightly non-serious, possibly satirical. But when Jason Bourne landed in the cinemas, I was blown away. So
Golden bullet.
You could talk us through your inventory. So in a way, it took me a while to warm up back to Daniel Craig, and I'm glad they did go with a more realistic, grounded version of Bond, because to me, the Bourne Identity changed the face of spy movies from big budgets productions in Hollywood forever. So
and also the Mission Impossible series has been kind of kicking Bond's ass for a while.
Well,
that was my next point. That was exactly my
Yeah.
Ethan Hunt, Jason Bourne to me are the ultimate action stars who are like the assassin agent type. And I understand it's a very different feeling to James Bond. James Bond feels like you could study it as a product of its era, which is why I think it's important to maintain that original creative control over it and not have it edited out. Obviously, some sensibilities are horrifyingly outdated and prejudiced and, don't fit anymore, and you can understand that. But I always think rather than, outlawing a product or some content, I'm not going to say that anymore, a film. Because that's what they are now, and that's how the execs and the corporations discuss them. But we should focus on what they're intended to be, which is a film or a movie or a great TV limited series, perhaps. But it's always better just to, you can use it educationally as well. If something is of its time and it's not right looking at it with a modern lens, then actually saying this film portrays outdated values, or this book has certain aspects of it that obviously are not congruent with modern society, that's an educational tool as well. That's a teachable thing, which I think we shouldn't run from. But
the early films especially were Bond used to be a travelogue as well, because you'd go to all these exotic places, which you never.
That's how I looked at the '90s James Bond. I was like, oh, he's going to all these cool places. Like, I didn't even know these existed. It's tropical and futuristic or chill.
Now because of the internet, all these things have been discovered already. So it's like, how do you reinvent it? And I think the fact that the Craig era tried to embrace Jason Bourne, which was for two reasons. One, Casino Royale was clearly, they were going to do that movie regardless. They wanted to do that. They even gave away all the Spider-Man rights and everything like that just to get the rights to Casino Royale. But they wanted to clearly imitate Jason Bourne, and they went over the top of that in Quantum of Solace. But when you get him too far out of the realm of fantasy, it starts becoming less James Bond and more like, apparently the reason they didn't go with Danny Boyle, or they parted ways with him, was because they said it was starting to resemble a CNN broadcast rather than a Bond movie. It's like, that's the thing. You got to keep it in the realm of fantasy. And like Spectre, you literally have like this evil organization sitting behind the evil table and planning all this stuff with a meteorite crater base. But the movie is trying to feel grounded, and it's not. It's like, if you're going to go for it, you really got to go for it and go into the fantasy and have fun with it. And they didn't, which is why Mission Impossible Rogue Nation, released 4 months earlier, had the same plot, by the way, a super shady organization was a much better movie because it leans into what it is. And Bond, it's like they were walking this weird line where they couldn't decide where they want to be. So it's like, keep it as what it is. Like, Amazon already has Jack Reacher, Jack Ryan. They're doing their own thing. Don't let Bond just become the next version of that.
Who is your next Bond? Who do you think?
Did you see Jeff Bezos was asking that on Twitter?
Yeah, it's like, oh God, please tell me that's
the most crazy thing. Yeah, imagine if they'd done that with, like, who's your next Luke Skywalker? Or God.
Oh God,
it had. So I just saw that tweet because you can view the stats on it without actually being signed into Twitter, which I don't have, and that's 30 million views and 32,000 comments on Jeff's tweet asking who would you cast as the next Bond, which is just insane.
And I am not one of them. I did not comment on that.
No, I have not either.
I abstain, even if I was on Twitter.
Yes. That was well, it's funny because now that Amazon has it, and they're going to be doing things a lot faster, then certain names which would be off the table, like Henry Cavill, Idris Elba, aren't really off the table anymore because they can crank out a few of those movies a lot faster. And that was the number one choice apparently from the people chiming in on Bezos's tweet, is they wanted Henry Cavill, but I don't know.
I think Idris Elba would be amazing.
I've been on the Idris Elba train a long time. I thought he would be fantastic, but he said in recent years that because of the bargain basement, racist asshole fans, that he kind of lost his luster or interest in it, which is unfortunate because he would be amazing. Rowan Atkinson.
Exactly,
yes, Johnny English. Make Johnny English James Bond.
Yeah, just 008.
My reservation in people voting for Henry Cavill is he's not going to be available, and they're going to cast David Cornsweet.
Oh dear. Bond will have a dog though, and then it'll verge into John Wick territory.
Yes, exactly. 006 is a dog.
Yes, Maladoc, I agree. Idris Elba, he's gotten older. Yes, he would have been great 20 years ago. And it's funny that
there's still room for the Bond gets old story. I wish they had done that, brought back Connery and done that.
If you can't get him to play Bond, he'd be a great Bond villain, because some of the best Bond villains are a reflection of Bond, like the evil version of that. He would be great for that.
You could even make him a Bond villain who used to be Bond that we never saw.
They tried that in Skyfall and it just didn't work because they were copying The Dark Knight rather than, it's like, oh, they tease that this guy's from M's past, he's an agent, and even Bond recognizes, oh yeah, you're an agent, you were me, because that's what she says, he was the best agent before you came along. But they wanted him to be more of the Joker rather than the character they were teasing, because they were clearly riffing on, oh yeah, he planned to get caught, we have the interrogation scene, instead of a Glasgow smile, we give him a melted upper jaw, and then he planned to escape. Nobody's going to see the parallels here, So yeah, I'd be fine with them doing that again. Daniel Logan.
And we just...
I've seen him, when I saw him at Celebration, he wears those big dark horn rim glasses. He'd be great for Q.
Oh, I liked it. Lost you for a second.
He's still here.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry. I was just so shocked at Daniel Logan, I had to go off camera.
Daniel Logan means
Idris Elba, like you said, he doesn't age as much as a lot of people, but he's getting a little old for what it happens to be.
Yeah.
You could have a single James Bond.
I don't know that's horrible, that you couldn't do that right. They won't do that right. But...
No, because here's the thing that I always say about gender swapping and why it's a bad idea. In the 80s, they wanted, what would be the female Indiana Jones? So rather than gender swapping him, they made Lara Croft Tomb Raider. And she's a badass because she's her own character and has her own movies, her own comic books, her own video games. And it's that's why we like that character, because it's her own thing. So and plus, again, Bond is a womanizer, and they divorced it from the whole British imperialist idea to make it more about a typical male fantasy. That's kind of what it is. It's if you change that or gender swap it, then it's literally not what it is anymore. So
it is like a young male. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good point, Scoob.
Would you rather have a known actor unknown? Yeah, unknown. That's the thing, Jen. That's one of the things that Amazon didn't like, is that Barbara and Michael like going with semi-unknown actors that, they might be known regionally, like Sean Connery done a couple things, and of course Roger Moore was in The Persuaders and then as the Saint and all that kind of stuff. But global audiences typically don't know who the actors are, and that's what they like, because they want Bond to be what defines their careers. And Amazon was like, no, we can't do that. We have to, trust the algorithm and the analytics. And it's like, oh, geez. But I would prefer an unknown. I think going back to that idea of the typical male fantasy, it's
I think Cavill would do it.
He would do it. I don't know if they might cast him if he's free, because he
should do it. He was great as a villain in.
If you're going to shake off being Superman, this could do it.
Right, because when that audition tapes leaked a month ago of all the different actors who've auditioned over some of the years, and his audition tape for Casino Royale wasn't great. He became a much better actor years later, because he was in the Man from U.N.C.L.E. movie. He was great in that.
Yeah.
so he could be a great Bond. But it's funny because
Yeah.
one of the reasons they didn't cast him in Casino Royale is they said he looks too much like Superman. But here's the thing: if you cast him, will there be too many comparisons to Superman, and will it get bogged down in meme to death to the point that it distracts from him playing the character?
Hey, but that can help a film if they just want numbers and
Okay, yes,
buttons on
no, Doc,
seats and
yes,
eyes.
I agree
Which one?
100% there. Atomic Blonde equals my favorite female James Bond. Yeah, and it's like great because that's her own character and is a badass because of it. That's what I love. Whereas Bond,
Wait,
it's like, yeah, men want to be him, women want to be with him. That's the idea. So it's like if you change that, then it's not really what it is anymore. And yeah, they reinvent the tone and stuff, but it's still essence the same character. And I think Bezos would be somebody who wouldn't be interested in gender swapping the character anyway. But they'll do spin-offs to death. And again, that's like I mentioned before, that was something they've explored in the past to mixed results. So it's not like it's going to be unprecedented they do that. It's just that it's going to be, I just don't have faith in these spin-offs being done particularly well. Because if the head of Prime Video refers to it as just content, then yeah. Naladoc says, wasn't that Argyle movie Cavill was in sort of kind of, he was, but that was also a very tongue-in-cheek like comedy where he's a very stiff, like the running joke is that the author is like caught up in a story that seems to be coming to life, and his character is only in the fantasy sequences, and he's very very one-dimensional deliberately, but not as like a three-dimensional character like he otherwise could
Well,
be.
and Cavill was in. You were talking about Mission Impossible, wasn't he a villain in Mission Impossible?
Yeah, Mission Impossible Fallout. He was fantastic. He was initially seemed to be an agent, and then he had that kind of turn, which surprised some people, didn't surprise others, but he pulled it off so well. And I think that and The Man from U.N.C.L.E. and maybe these few scenes in Argyle are evidence that he could fill Bond's role in many different ways, whether you want a satirical Bond, a throwback Bond, a modern era Bond.
Yeah.
He's versatile enough, and he's now free of things like The Witcher, which is another IP that you could argue was ruined by a massive streaming studio.
That's a great point, because since he cares about that and cares about the IP, he's been trying to get a Warhammer thing going too.
Oh yeah.
I don't think he would jump on to James Bond if he knew that they were going to completely change it and rewrite it. He would probably respect it more.
Well, that's probably the truth. He probably has enough money that if the project is not right, he's not going to do it.
Right.
The same kind of thing to where if you let him, I think he would fully fund a Warhammer 40,000 like himself.
He could crowdfund that.
Write, direct, and produce and star in this movie. Good.
No, Doc, that is funny, and I agree 100%. And I would laugh so hard if they don't gender swap the critical drinker and do. I want nothing that's great. That would be great.
At some point,
it would be very good.
But yes, I mean, we can see what happens, and I mean, it may be a thing where it goes down a rabbit hole. Oh yes,
I found this in a mom and pop's bookstore in Grass Valley, and it's like, ooh, I gotta get this. I know this is legit.
This may end up being the kind of thing that Disney Lucasfilm. It hasn't been amazing. It has produced some really good stuff. It has produced some stuff that was not everybody's cup of tea. It really has made Star Wars content. I mean, I think that's the biggest thing that we're talking about here is Bond doesn't want to become content. And for dead level sure, Disney owning Star Wars has made it content. We're going to put out a series on every single thing. Some of it's going to be good. Some of it's going to be not good. Some of it's going to be completely and totally what you're talking about is like, what's the flavor of the moment? Oh, we got to put out a series that hits that.
As far as what I want from James Bond, I want him to go back to unrelated standalone movies. Like no to be continued, no character arc. Like do what Bond does best. Because when you don't have all those extra shared universe stuff, then the writers aren't going to be tied down and obligated to worry about all that crap. Like,
I think that's
5 months ago, Tom Holland gave an interview where he said, "Yeah, we read the Spider-Man 4 script, and like it's really good, but we have to make these changes and figure out how we're going to make it fit in the shared universe." And I'm like, no, it's never a bad time to make a good movie And it's never a good idea to ruin a good script just because of the shared universe stuff. It's like, no. It's like,
so I mean, make things stand by themselves. Yeah.
I think that's a whole other show and a whole other talk is are like standalone movies done? I mean, and at this current point in time, it's getting awful close.
I mean, I think they'll still do the mainline series of movies, but if they start tying it into their spin-offs and stuff, like see James Bond the Teen Years, James Bond and the Philosopher's Stone.
Yeah. Well, James Bond the Teen Years is here's your content for Tom Holland right there.
I think a series that they would probably
that has Tom Holland and Zendaya written all over it.
I was gonna say Zendaya's, she'll fit there.
A series that they probably would do is his time in the Navy because he is Commander Bond, and that's something that you don't really get much of in the movies. So that would be something that they might exploit, or they'll do a Skyfall prequel series of when him and Blofeld were stepbrothers.
Oh no!
God, you're right. You know,
they'll do all the things. It's like, oh, let's just make The Hunt for Red October again, but it's Alec Baldwin as James Bond.
Q, not the Star Trek guy.
No, James Bond is Q, the Star Trek guy.
Mind blown.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what Amazon have control over now. Who will play Bond? Who will write the new script? Basically the entire crew as well as cast behind whatever next film it will be, and then when it goes into production, right? So these are things that have been put off by the whole kind of stalemate between, I guess, Eon and
stalemate is over, and
Wilson and Broccoli
going down
versus MGM. But yeah, that's the problem, that you can just corporatize
no. Amazon,
they're coming to buy you out next, Cat.
No.
Yeah, no phrasing is safe.
Yeah, see, they're going to change our ampersand to the word and that'll be allowed, by the courts, and they won't take it.
Well, anyway, thanks everybody for joining us. This has been a super fun, interactive show. There will be more old people railing at clouds again about this topic in the future. I know. So be back here. we will get back to it. And we'll do what they want us to do, which is we're going to go and look at this content, whatever it is, when they do it. And
but cheers to a family-run business for 63 years. Pretty damn impressive.
I didn't actually realize Wilson was a stepbrother to Barbara Broccoli until these announcements started coming out. But yeah, it truly was in the family.
Yeah, because he's actually Broccoli's stepson. Because from his site, see, there was
Broccoli's. Mm-hmm.
Yep, that.
There was much Star Wars talk today.
Hey, look.
I was wondering, actually, though, would people watch a deconstruct? You could argue that Daniel Craig era of 007 was deconstructed in like a modernist approach, but would people accept like a postmodern deconstruction of the James Bond character in a way that, I know this is going to set alarms ringing, in a way that Rian Johnson did with The Last Jedi?
And here we go.
I think that a lot of fans kind of feel that that's what No Time to Die already did, because it was really personal. He's a family man. I mean, that movie was clearly their attempt to give us the novel version of You Only Live Twice, but I don't think they want to do that again. I think they want to go back to hopefully they're going to have to figure out how to reinvent it, but it's like, that's a whole other thing. I don't think they're going to do another deconstruction in a row.
Skip saying don't go there. You have to go there.
Go watch one. Okay, let's do this one. Last thing, I promise. And then we're like, if you had to tell Dave Lewis which Bond film to go start with, where should he go start?
Well, Goldfinger is a good one, and it's a very unique one compared to the others. But it also, like I mentioned before, has some dated stuff in it. Spy Who Loved Me that's a good one that people like. Because I'm trying to think for somebody who's never seen a Bond film. I mean, GoldenEye is great.
GoldenEye
I would say GoldenEye.
GoldenEye is that's
somebody to start.
Or Casino Royale if you want to see like an origin story.
Yeah, I don't know that GoldenEye is the most representative of all the Bond films.
But yes, David Lewis, that is the Pierce Brosnan ones. Yes,
yes, the Pierce Brosnan ones would be GoldenEye.
Tomorrow Never Dies, I think, is good too. I mean, they cut it to look like a '90s action movie, like a typical. But I thought that was a really good one. Yes,
what's the name of the one that was Thunderball before Thunderball?
Before Thunderball?
Yeah, it's the same plot, I thought.
But, well, Thunderball was the first one to use the Thunderball plot of Spectre stealing nuclear warheads and holding the world hostage.
Oh, maybe it was then.
And then the unofficial remake was Never Say Never Again in 1983. But that was cringe because Connery was really long in the tooth at that point.
Yes, the game came from the movie.
Yes, the game came from the movie, and the game was a good expansion on the story. And it was great. Dave skips, David, you don't get a vote. David Lewis doesn't.
It's a dictatorship. Yeah,
that was the thing right there. Is go watch the GoldenEye movie. It's fun. It's a little romp. It's a little more comedic than mini films.
Yeah.
What's the Timothy Dalton?
Oh,
Living Daylights.
Yes.
Yeah.
Also a very much a product of its time, but the Living Daylights is pretty representative of Bond in the 80s.
And his portrayal is the closest to the novel version of the character. Mm-hmm. That great big cringe Skip Ruckles says. And I'm not sure which one that's in response to.
But yeah. Thanks everybody for watching. We can go on with this and stuff. What? Skip? Come on. Again, product of its time. Oh,
I don't have a problem with him working with the Mujahideen.
We got to answer this one. What's the worst one?
This is a separate episode. The best and the worst of Bond tier list.
I really didn't like You Only Live Twice because that book was written as a direct sequel to Majesties. It was a revenge story, and because they hadn't made Majesties yet, that movie was very flat. There's a solid 30 minutes where nothing happens, and it just doesn't move the story forward. I love Japan. It's a gorgeous country. I've never seen it look more flat and uninteresting in film. I couldn't suspend my disbelief to accept that the villains built a massive volcano lair without anybody knowing. As badass as that set is, the fact that Blofeld is, the big bad of those first few movies, and there's no build up to that meeting between them. They don't seem to know who each other is. And Blofeld's more concerned with launching his rocket than the fact that he's finally meeting James Bond. And it's just, and I thought it was a bit of a mess. I just didn't. And then the whole becoming Japanese thing, it's like, oh God, but that's another thing entirely. But Little Ellie's cool. But that's, I'd say, the worst for me.
Okay.
I'm going to go with a least favorite Bond as opposed to an individual movie. I want to say my least favorite Bond is Roger Moore. I know, don't hurt me. But
how dare you? No, I'm the same.
But yeah, I mean, because I can tolerate Dalton because of what it was, and it didn't last long, and I really enjoy Brosnan. Daniel Craig is not my favorite Bond, but I see where they were. It's not his fault. It's what they were trying to do with Bond at the time.
Yeah.
But Sean Connery would be my favorite Bond.
Oh yeah, easily. And that's the type of Bond they need. A Bond who actually likes being Bond. Who likes the secret agent life, who isn't morose all the time like Craig is. So that would be nice.
Yeah.
And Skip says Never Say Never Again is the least favorite. Yeah, that's not even part of the official series, which is why it usually gets the vote. Yeah,
that film was always a little unusual to me, but I agree. My least favorite Bond is Roger Moore, and I know he brings a lot of people to it in a different way.
Yeah.
It's a particular slant on the character, but I don't know. A lot of these films,
it's like he's a parody of the character in a way.
Yeah, which is why when I saw like Rowan Atkinson as Johnny English, I was like, that's already been done in a way.
Yeah.
In fact, Johnny English I'd prefer to watch than the Roger Moore films. But anyway, don't want to start a war over that.
Yes.
But Rowan Atkinson as a serious character is quite a funny shout as well.
My least favorite Bond actor was Lazenby, even though his movie is appreciated a lot more now than it was at the time. A lot of Bond fans say Majesties is their favorite, and it's like I like the story, but I just
I completely forgot about Lazenby.
Yeah, see,
Completely.
Yeah, because
my friend had a funny. Scott had a funny story. Who I co-hosted the Bond show. He was working in Australia for like 6 months at a bar, and he's looking around at late at night when a bunch of people are in there. And he's like, I've been here for 6 months and nobody has apologized for George Lazenby. I'm like, did you get out alive?
So here's the thing right here is this is your tie back into the Star Wars is your Bond is it's like your Star Wars. Are you prequels? Are you sequels? Are you original trilogy?
Yeah, which
It's
is your
the
favorite
same
Bond?
with Bond is who your Bond is where you came into it, and right there is more is Skip's Bond is like I think I own 8 Sean Connery Bond films on VHS. It's where it is, and you can make it for everyone that way without changing the fundamentals of Bond. People are going to come to it and people are going to enjoy it. And you can make it for another generation by making a good film in that time. Like you make a good Bond film right now, and you are going to have people come to Bond. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah. I would say a slight difference with Star Wars versus the James Bond franchise is that I feel as if Star Wars is even more the time you grew up is the Star Wars that you might like the most for a lot of people, not everyone. Whereas I think because James Bond is so long running, has had such a variety of almost tones to the films as well as characters playing Bond, that it's more like whichever one you happen to watch when you were a certain age, or the first one that you got
Completely
into.
true. Because
And it could
again,
be from the
I'm not
60s or
old
the
enough.
90s. Yeah.
I'm not old enough that I saw the Connery movies originally. Those are the ones that I watched first, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And in fact, the first time I saw Bond was as Sean Connery. It was just it happened to be on a Saturday afternoon at the time on like terrestrial television. So it had adverts, which was annoying, broke up the momentum a bit. But that's how I came across James Bond first. And then I immediately saw Pierce Brosnan. And I guess when I think of James Bond, the first image that pops into my mind is, GoldenEye. But that doesn't mean he's the definitive Bond for me. But he's the first association I have with it.
Yeah. Very true.
Yep, Naladoc says he liked Roger Moore as a kid, but can't watch them now. Yeah, I feel there's a lot of people like that too.
Yeah, that must resonate a lot.
All right, we have gone a long time for Unifying Force today.
That is
but we had a lot of stuff to talk about today.
We did. And I am very thankful for, again, everybody who came in here. And we love doing this live when we can do it live, because all the comments and your participation makes the show. So thanks very much. And until next time, let's thank our friends from Hyperspace Props that are going to be sponsoring the Not So Virtual Cantina Special Edition that will be in Japan. I'll join them for all of your sabak and credit needs. But thanks for watching, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. May the Force be with you all.
Always.